or any data on waste arising, does it?
Well, I haven't read that report, so I can't comment.
Indeed, the only information it takes, or provides, I should say, is taken from the RAP 20 or 2009 study. Would you not know that either?
I don't know.
If in actual fact that is the only information it provides, obviously people can go away and look at it if they want to, it provides no further or later information than that which was available in 2009, does it?
Well, if that is the position, that follows, yes.
Yeah. And therefore wouldn't actually be taking the matter any further on this issue of waste arising from where it's going to, would it?
Well, in terms of the data, the up-to-date data, no, it wouldn't. But in terms of the commentary, in terms of the reliability of that data and the market position, then I think those comments are still equally applicable. And the CD80 acknowledges that the data on wastewood is not clear.
Right. Okay.
So that position hasn't changed.
Right. Now, if we go back to paragraph 60 of the AEA report for the inquiry,
yes.
The conclusions, the other documents it tells us to go away and look at are newspaper articles.
Yes.
Which I think we can agree at the outset, by their nature, tend to be anecdotal rather than any form of serious study, don't they?
It probably depends which newspaper one's reading, but the articles I think which are being referred to here are articles which are including comments from the members of the Recyclers Association. So I think that the information can be relied upon as being authentic.
It may be authentic, it doesn't stop it being effectively anecdotal rather than any real study, does it, Mr. Singleton?
It's not an empirical study, no, I accept that.
Now, all the newspaper reports we're being told to look at, are those produced in Appendix F?
Yes.
Thank you. Can we turn to your Appendix F then, please?
Yes.
Now, the first one, which is entitled, if I've got mine the same way as you have, biomass output not good for wood.
That's the first I have.
First one. Yep, that's good.
The inspector's got the same one.
It's always a problem with these ring binders, people start fiddling with them. That report, when one reads through it, is simply discussing, isn't it, what may be the impact of government policy with respect to subsidies.
Well, it's discussing the effect of renewable obligations and the likelihood that the conversions position and conversion of existing plants may change, yes.
Yeah, it's really just discussing what may be the impact of government policy with respect to subsidies, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it's also the main thrust of this is that those changes, if you look at the paragraph after the sort of subheading of the third main paragraph.
Is this under the banding review paragraph or the
no, that's the next one. I think the comments starting latest blow to wood recyclers who are currently struggling to offload waste wood. So that's what the main thrust of that article is about. So it's the impact of those changes on the business, on the industry.
Well, it might be thought to be part of a lobbying exercise with respect to people campaigning for their subsidy, might be, Mr.
Well, one could take that view. I certainly don't read it in that way. I think it's an assessment of what the impact of those changes are on the waste recycling industry, wood waste recycling industry.
And what subsidies to provide is ultimately a decision for the government.
Absolutely.
And it's a decision that no doubt will be properly informed by the government, taking into account what it sees as the implications of its decision with respect to subsidies. It presumably have some options in front of it, and will assess those options as to what the implications of taking various different steps are, won't it?
Well, I'm sure that's right, but I'm sure the government has also made those decisions in light of its continued emphasis on being the greenest government and achieving its renewable energy targets.
Well, that's my my next point really is succinctly. In making those decisions on subsidies, the government will be clearly taking into account the position with respect to renewable energy.
Yes.
And indeed also implications for the waste hierarchy, presumably, won't it?
I assume so, yes.
Yeah. And we just have to trust that the government will make the right decision on that, don't we?
Let us trust so.
Can I just understand, anyway, are you suggesting that this applies to your client's proposal at all, what's being said here?
Well, it's a general picture of the waste wood stream.
Yeah, but I mean, what's really being said, as I understand it, is that with what's being offered by, or what's being proposed to be offered, I think is probably the right way of putting it, what's being proposed to be offered by way of subsidies for biomass may not be as attractive now as it was thought it was going to be in the past.
Well, yes, I think that's right. But again, as I read this, one of the key implications, and it's in the final paragraph, is called the emissions submission, which says that it's good news for virgin wood pellets, but not for recovered wood, unless it's grade A. That's not the source that we are proposing to use in this plan.
Yes, I mean, do tell me if I'm misreading it, Mr. Singleton, but as I read it, what it seems to be saying is that there will be less potential subsidy for the source of fuel that you're proposing to use for this plant, which will make the economics of developing these sorts of plants less attractive, and therefore they may be less likely to be developed, I think is what's being said.
Well, I think that's part of it, but that does seem to be that there will be a reduced demand as a result of the decisions being indicated by companies.
Which
those changes,
right.
substance drags.
Yeah. If it applies, and you see this is why I'm asking you, if it applies to your client's site and your client's proposal, all it seems to be saying is that it's casting some economic doubts about it.
Well, no, I think what the implication is that those changes, or the decisions being made by companies to go co-firing rather than to build new plants, suggests that there will be a reduced demand from that source. But I would have thought that's the implication of that is that there is then more opportunity for proposals such as BREC to create a market for the waste wood in lower rates.
Now,
and as we've seen, government policy is very much supporting that initiative.
Now, the second article I've got here is the Stobart Biomass Force to Control Waste Wood Gas article.
Yes.
Yeah. As I sort of label it, the Soggy Weetabix article.
There is a reference to Soggy Weetabix, yes.
Yeah, more than once I think actually. I mean, I found it fascinating. I have to say it wasn't necessarily the best thing to read at breakfast time, but I wasn't sure. I'm not sure what's the relevance of this particular thing. I did struggle to see where it's taking us.
Well, I think the relevance is that first of all, it confirms that this is actually a very new business. You'll see that on page 2, Mr. Davis, who is from the port, I think, rather than from Stolen, says that we're on a learning curve. Waste wood biomass is a relatively new product. We're still getting to grips with how it is best handled and managed within the port. Supports my point. This is a new and immature market, which is still developing and needs to be supported in developing to make sure that there is a supply of lower grade waste wood. What it tells us also is at the moment a large portion of the waste wood which is available is being exported. Now, that, looking at the waste hierarchy, that isn't the most sustainable option that the government is seeking to promote, I'm certain.
Sorry, well, telling us that this is a sort of an immature market which people aren't used to dealing with, so we're having Soggy Weetabix and problems for the community because people aren't actually very used to dealing with it and very competent dealing with it, may enhance the concerns of the local people, and so it was very proper and frank of you to bring it to the inquiry's attention, Mr. Singleton. but I don't see how it assists us at all with understanding what might be the amount of waste wood that's going to landfill.
Well, I think it probably does, because if we have large stocks being held in ports, and there will clearly be a practical limit as to how much can be stocked on site for all the reasons that this article is discussing. And the requirement, or the market at the moment is overseas in Scandinavia, which is a long way away, is uncertain and decreasing. Then the implication is that in the future more and more of that wood will be sent to landfill, because the combination of haulage costs will make it a more cost-effective option.
Tell me, is it going to landfill in Scandinavia?
No, it's not.
So this is waste wood, which is by definition not going to landfill, isn't it?
Well, it's not, provided that there is a market for it, it won't go to landfill. But as we discussed yesterday, if there is no demand and nobody willing to buy it, what option does the handler have? Waste hardly only works if there is a practicable recycling or recovery option.
And in actual fact, I don't understand it as being an article that tells us we're not managing to dispose of this waste wood to Scandinavia. It's an article that deals with the learning curve of how to handle it, isn't it?
Well, it does, but I'm reading it in conjunction with the other article which I took the inspector to yesterday, which does confirm that there is a reduced demand, or has been a reduced demand from particularly mild winter in Sweden, which is in Scandinavia, I think.
Was the last time I looked.
Was the last time I looked. So I think the two articles are related.
Some things don't change. Yes.
So insofar as these articles are different, they do seem to be telling us some of the same story.
Well, what they do tell us is that the economics are such that despite the issue with transportation costs, which you tell us is so critical, it actually makes more economic sense to send things to Scandinavia than to dispose of them by way of landfill in this country, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and that could be one of the conclusions you draw. Whether that is sustainable and whether that's what is the government is seeking to achieve through the waste hierarchy, I would have to question.
And the other thing we have to bear in mind, of course, is that the Soggy Weetabix article is a January 2012 article, isn't it?
Yes.
So clearly predates the DEFRA call for evidence by some 6 months.
That's correct.
And no doubt DEFRA would be aware if there was an issue of this issue when they raised their call for evidence 6 months later.
Depends whether they read the article, I suppose. But the other article we referred to, of course, is 28th of August 2012.
That's the next one, isn't it? The fears grow of the waste wood mountain.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. First thing we can say about that is this is very clearly an anecdotal report. There is no assessment or analysis whatsoever in this article.
Well, it is not a report of a study, an empirical study or otherwise.
There's no assessment or analysis whatsoever, empirical or otherwise.
Well, not in the article, no.
Okay. And indeed, interestingly, the Environment Agency advice is that they are unaware of any difficulties, isn't it?
That's what the Environment Agency is saying.
And indeed, that what is being talked about is no more than seasonal variation.
That's the reported agency view.
Yeah. And
whether that's the full quotation, of course we don't know. That's what's being reported there.
Are these the body that we have every full confidence in know what they're doing and talking about?
We have every confidence in them in terms of acting as the regulator, yes. Because that's what policy tells us we should do.
Well, acting as
I don't know, and I will just caveat my response. I don't know, as you say, because this is an article presumably written by a journalist. I have no idea whether what they put in quotation marks in that section represents the full response and comments from the agency. I suspect it doesn't, but I have no idea.
So what you're telling us is you suspect that this is an unreliable report which we cannot place weight upon, aren't you, Mr.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying by definition it is a report. I'm sure that the person writing the report has contacted a number of people and sought contributions. The report then presumably has a target length and content, and the journalist will have taken bits of quotations from here and bits of quotations there in order to cover the range of the story that he wants to cover, or she wants to cover. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's unreliable. I'm saying I don't know whether that reflects the full comment from the agency. What I do know is that it also includes quotation from the county officer who tells us that there is a problem.
Whether it is the full comment from the agency or not, Mr. Singleton, are you saying that the journalist there has not reported properly the substance of what the Environment Agency was saying?
Well, I don't know. It is possible, but I don't know.
Well, that's quite a serious allegation against the journalist, but it also means we cannot pay any credence to this article, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. I reject that.
And again, what we can also see is that insofar as this article refers to any particular issue, it's an issue which is raised with respect to the south and east of England, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is.
There is no suggestion that there's any issue with respect to the north or the northwest of England.
Well, there's certainly not in this article. You say it deals with the position in the south and east.
And what we're told is that it has arisen because of a mild winter in Sweden.
Well, that's one of the reasons.
Well, let's just have a look. What we're told at the bottom of the first page after the Environment Agency comments on it. One recycler in the southeast said, "We've stopped taking in wastewood as there are no outlets. Our material was going to a biomass plant up north, but they put a stop on it. As there's so much around and it's piling up in our yard. Fears grow of waste matter." Oh, sorry, that's the heading again, isn't it?
I think that's the heading again.
Yeah. It looks like then we've had a line shot.
I think there is actually possibly a line cut off, isn't there, in the photocopy?
Yeah, it looks like there's been a line cut off actually. Sorry, I hadn't spotted that before. Don't worry.
Yes, I'm sorry, I haven't noticed that.
No, don't worry.
We can find the originals to see if it was an exciting part of the content.
Well, I mean, the inspector may well want to see that. I hope it doesn't matter for present purposes. What we can see is there's at the top of the next page something missing, and it says to export material again in preparation for coming winter, and then wood recyclers are desperately hoping for a cold winter and an upturn in the economy to really turn the situation around. So again, the conclusion that's being drawn there by the journalist, having spoken to the wood recyclers, presumably, because this doesn't seem to be, in quotations, this seems to be her comment. The conclusion drawn by the journalist is that a cold winter and an upturn in the economy will turn matters around, isn't it?
Well, at that part of the article, yes, that is the summary. But then we look at the position in Surrey, where Mr. Foster tells us that that is one of the factors, but the other factors are the increasing landfill tax and the gate prices.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment, don't we? But in actual fact, it's interesting, isn't it? If an upturn in the economy is seen as something that will turn the matter around, then any issue of there being additional waste arising, which is the point you were making earlier about there'll be more waste arising if there's more development because of an upturn in the economy, that actually is seen as something that's going to ride to the rescue here, isn't it? Rather than something that creates an additional problem.
Well, I think in the sense that I take this comment to mean, and of course we don't know for certain as we're only reading what we have, that an upturn in the economy will presumably lead to greater demand for electricity, whether that's from industrial processes, whether it's from retail, leisure complexes or whatever. and therefore increase the demand and flatten out the effects of that seasonal change.
Sorry.
If that is the case, then clearly that's good for those who are providing and selling the waste wood on to the potential users. But the upturn in the economy is also likely to have the effect that I've talked about, which is to increase the volume of the waste stream to waste. And that certainly will help the recycling and recovery market generally, won't it?
If it's something that can be addressed by a cold winter and an upturn in the economy, it is clearly something that is seen as a temporary situation, isn't it?
Well, in respect to the current stockpile, yes.
But
that also reflects the immaturity of the market, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then there's reference to Sonai halfway down the page, and there is a reference to 400,000 tonnes. I think yesterday you were saying 300.
Well,
we've got different figures bandied about.
I think it was in. I think it's 400,000. I think that's the figure that Mr. Watson referred to. I think it was in the Hadfield letter at 300.
Yeah, we see different figures. I suspect for present purposes it probably doesn't really matter too much whether it's 300.
Well, it's relevant, isn't it, in the sense that that's for 300 or 400,000. We're saying we would take 140,000, so it just puts it in context in terms of the overall supply.
What we've got to bear in mind with Sonai is it was recycling wood, wasn't it?
Well, it was wood going for recycling, yes.
Yeah. Not wood that should be used. Not wood that should be used for this sort of facility, is it?
No, but as I've just said, you can only apply the waste hierarchy in a practical sense. And the example I gave yesterday of the waste paper being segregated in the waste collection service, but then being sent to landfill, and that was happening in a number of areas across the country because there was no recycling market.
Yeah. But the Sonai plant is not actually relevant to this issue because it was addressing wood that was being dealt with higher up the waste hierarchy, which should not sustainably be used for fuel for this facility, should it?
Well, if there is a market for it in recycling, then that's absolutely right.
And indeed, as Mr. Watson's explained, one of the complaints of those people who are involved in recycling wood is they are facing unfair competition from subsidies for biomass, which means that they actually can't then get the recycled wood, which is presumably one of the issues that the government is considering when we look at the subsidies, which was the first article, isn't it?
I'm sure that is one of the issues, but that will come through in trying to balance the market. And the problem we have at the moment is that the lower grades are not being segregated and therefore are not being made available.
And so, again, Sonai, anyway, is one of those temporary occurrences. There's nobody suggesting that there isn't going to be something else that takes up the recycling of the wood that went to Sonai, is there?
There's no suggestion that there is. I can see.
And again, Sonai, as Mr. Watson explained, was a plant that had its own difficulties, not at all associated with the supply or the issues that had before this inquiry, didn't it?
It had a fire, which I understand resulted in a temporary closure. One assumes that the company had an insurance policy and therefore could claim and restart the business. One assumes that the business has taken the decision that wasn't the best option for them.
They had significant health and safety issues with the plant itself.
I understand.
So, the situation is this, isn't it? If we go back to the AEA, oh, I'm sorry, there was one other point here, wasn't there, that you wanted to draw our attention to. The other point I think you were drawing our attention to is the comments that are made under the heading of Surrey.
Yes.
Yeah. And the point that was being made there, as I understand it by the gentleman, is that there are places up north where you can take it, but the logistics mean the figures don't stack up. So, if he's just pausing there for a moment, we'll look at the rest of it in a minute, but if he's right, then it would mean, wouldn't it, too, that it wouldn't, this location, Surrey, wouldn't actually be a practical source of supply for the appeal side, because the logistics, the figures wouldn't stack up, would they?
Well, that's a combination of the gate fees and the haulage costs. And the gate fees clearly reflect the market and the market demand for the product.
Well, sorry, I don't quite understand. Are you saying you do contemplate that this site will be taking waste wood from Surrey?
We've said very clearly that we expect the waste wood that is used in the plant to be sourced from the northwest.
Okay.
And I said that the haulage costs clearly are a significant factor.
Then if you're expecting the waste wood to be sourced from the northwest, and that's the basis on which you're asking the inspector and the Secretary of State to consider the proposal, what may or may not be the temporary situation in the east or the south is irrelevant to this inquiry.
Well, I'm not saying the situation in the south is relevant. What I'm saying is that the factors which are contributing to that situation clearly are relevant to the overall supply position. And what Mr. Foster says is we have this supply, but we can't actually use it for recycling or recovery because logistics, which is a combination of my understanding of the gate fees, so this is what contractors are having to pay in order to offload that waste wood, and the haulage costs make it uneconomic to transport it to a site that could use it for recovery. Therefore, it's going to landfill.
Well, no, he's not saying it's going to landfill. He's not saying that, is he, Mr. Singleton?
Well, I think
it was in the middle of the answer, Mr. Fraser, if you don't mind.
And what the wood, trying to look for the comment with Mr. Foster, the paragraph further down, said that he was concerned about looking at proposals to introduce landfill restrictions for waste wood. And he said, this is another quotation, we're going to respond to the consultation from DEFRA to say that they should, i.e. DEFRA, the government should think very carefully about the waste as the market for waste, I think he means about the waste market for waste wood, before you start putting restrictions on its landfill. That clearly indicates a continuing problem.
Where does he say any of the wood's going to landfill?
Well, he doesn't. Well, he does. He says getting up to landfill costs.
Where does he say any of it is going to landfill?
Well, he doesn't say it in precise terms, but that's the clear implication.
Well, it isn't actually, is it? Because his complaint is that sending it up north would actually be getting up to landfill costs. But of course, your point is that the market will dictate because you'll go which is the cheapest option. If it's only getting up to landfill costs, he's telling us that landfill is more expensive, isn't he?
So why is he issuing the warning to government that they have to think very carefully about the whole market position before they start introducing restrictions on landfill?
That's a very interesting question. He doesn't explain it, does he, Mr. Singleton?
Well, the inspector's heard my interpretation of the inference I draw.
And the other thing that we have to remember is that it's getting up to landfill costs now, he says, but of course landfill costs will continue to increase because of the escalator, won't they?
They will, and that could lead us into the situation I described yesterday, where a lot of this waste wood doesn't end in landfill, it ends up backfilling or being burnt on the site.
You see, the bottom line we've got here is, again, that this is wood that isn't going to landfill. The point they're making is they think it's stacking up, but that is also, just let me finish occasionally, that is also making, in another way, the point that it isn't going to landfill, isn't it, Mr.
I think if we can agree that it's wood that should not go to landfill, then the inspector will understand the difference between us.
I think we've got over this ground pretty thoroughly as well.
So, if we then turn back to the AEA report, your Appendix D, the situation is this, isn't it? The AEA report acknowledges that Mr. Watson has used the latest data.
With the caveat that we've looked at, yes.
It says we should have looked at those other documents, which we've now looked at.
Yes.
None of which provide any further data on supply or waste arising, do they?
There is no new data.
And therefore, the position is that AEA do not draw our attention to, even less, produce any additional data beyond the up-to-date data provided by DEFRA, do they?
They do not produce any new data.
They provide nothing to contradict the DEFRA data, do they?
Well, they don't contradict it. They do comment on it in terms of the reliability of that data.
They don't even say they disagree with it, do they?
Well, they don't say they disagree with it, but they put it in the context of the reliability of it.
Well, the reliability would apply presumably just as much to the older data as well, wouldn't it?
Well, I think we've talked about it already.
Of course, AEA could have, if they had so wished, if you had clients had instructed them, they could have assessed wood waste arisings, couldn't they?
Probably not in the timescale that they had to do it.
Is that why they weren't asked to do it? Or were they
Well,
asked?
they weren't asked to do it, but I think it would have been very challenging to produce the most up-to-date report, given all the things they say about the availability and the reliability of the data.
And indeed, what they could have done is look at what was the position with respect to arisings and supply in either Greater Manchester or the North West, if they had wished to do so, couldn't they?
Well, they comment on the position in the North West. But I agree, they don't produce any new data.
Thank you. Now, can we then turn to the Peel document, which is document E, or appendix E, I should say, to your rebuttal?
Yes.
Again, that document does not identify any report which is available, which Mr. Watson has referred to, does it?
No.
It doesn't identify the presence of any report which might be said to be personal to Peel, that they're not sharing with us.
No.
It doesn't provide any information as to the volume or source of waste arisings, does it?
Generally, no.
Yeah. And very significantly, search as one may, one finds absolutely no mention of landfill in that report, does one?
I'm sure you're right. I'm rereading it to check, but I'm sure you're right.
So it doesn't even address the question of whether it may be diverting, any of its source may be diverting wood that is currently going to landfill, does it?
Well, I wouldn't expect it to do so on the basis that the proposed supply has been described as waste wood.
It does contemplate, of course, importation, doesn't it?
Well, it contemplates it in terms of the ensuring that safeguarding against interruption of supply, yes.
Yeah. And indeed, there is absolutely nothing in the report to assist us in forming any view as to the compliance of the proposal with the waste hierarchies.
Well, the report doesn't address that. That's not the purpose of the report. The report is to demonstrate how important it is to Peel Energy and implicitly, therefore, to its funders, whoever those funders might be, to ensure that there is a robust supply.
Yes, but whether there's a robust supply economically is quite a different question to whether that supply will then be in accordance with the waste hierarchy.
The supply will be subject to conditions within, the fuel type is subject to conditions within the permit. Clearly, the plant can't operate in accordance with the terms of the permit.
Now, if we then turn, I think finally, the final document you draw our attention to is Appendix G, I hope I'm not mistaken, which is the statement from the wood recyclers.
Yes.
The wood recyclers would know the difference between recycling and recovery, wouldn't they?
Generally, yes.
Well, they clearly do here because they distinguish between the two.
Yes.
And what they tell us, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph down, is that Peel's projects at Barton and Ince are ideally situated to capture recycled wood from the Greater Manchester conurbation and wider northwest. Recycled wood is not what it should be capturing, is it?
Well, no, but I certainly read that as being a term which covered both recycled and recovered.
Well,
but I
of course you
understand
might say
the
that.
point
But you can see, if we look at their final paragraph, they distinguish between recycling and recovery, don't they?
Yes, they do.
So they clearly know the difference and know what they're talking about.
Yes,
One would hope they know what they're talking about.
Yes, but I'm also sure they know the nature of the project and the basis on which it's being proposed. They also confirm the need for the energy sector to be developed in order to create the market for
And what they then tell us in the next paragraph is a thriving biomass energy sector is vital if we are to maximise our ability to bring as much waste wood material as possible back into use, particularly grades of material that do not have a ready market elsewhere, be this grade C material which cannot be reused in the manufacture of board, or grade B material for which there may be no ready demand within the region and which may be uncompetitive to transport elsewhere. Grade B again is the wood that should be being recycled.
Well, just to comment, what they say in that is that the creation of the market through development facilities like this would enable us to bring as much waste wood material as possible back into use. Now, you might query that term back into use, because if we apply that to the waste hierarchy, that would suggest reuse, which is even above recycling. So I repeat I think this letter has not been written in the terms that you or I would write it. Clearly it isn't intended that we'd be using wood which could be reused. So I think that is a general term to say we actually want to be using this wood to good purpose. And it does make the point that I've already made that in respect to grade C material, that would be wood for which there is no other recycling market.
But we can see that they're expressly contemplating what we all know to be wood that should be recycled, grade B.
Well, no, it says particularly grades of wood that do not have a ready market elsewhere. I assume that covers C and D, and then they say B is grade C material.
They refer specifically to grade B material,
yes,
which you would agree is material that should be recycled, wouldn't you?
Should be recycled, yes, I agree.
And indeed, we can see just for the slow of uptake, they repeat the point, and for the third time, increasing the range of end users for recycled wood will be of major benefit. They obviously are seeing this as really a facility for recycled wood rather than wood going to landfill, aren't they?
Well, no, they're not, because they say at the end of that sentence that increase the range of end users, and I think that covers all end users, be it recycling or those that can recover energy from the waste, will be critical. It will ultimately underpin the capital investment, so that's the capital investment that's needed in the waste recycling, and they are recyclers, that's what they call themselves, but they're clearly providing a role within the industry which is recovering the wood that can be used for energy recovery. So they need to invest capital, they need security of supply in order to be able to do that. And they end by saying what that will do as a whole is to ensure maximum utility is derived from this valuable resource across all grades of material. And I think that's the main point of the letter.
Thank you. Now, can we then turn back to the AEA report? Your appendix D. And if we turn to page 13, Table 4 on page 13 sets out figures for comparison of landfill waste wood data sources, doesn't it?
Yes.
And we can see that rather confusingly, they call also the final column DEFRA 2012. That's actually the call for evidence.
That's the call
document.
I don't think they're trying to confuse us, but I agree that.
But it is a bit confusing. But,
yes.
But just so that we're clear, I think we're in agreement. It's the call for evidence they're referring to there.
That's that figure, I think. Yes.
Yeah. And we can see that all of the other, as we would know, all of the other data sources predate the 2012 report.
Yes.
And indeed, some, in fact, are effectively, I think, referred to in the 2012 one.
So
some of these earlier sources are referred to in the 2012 one.
Yes, I think the 2012 looks back at the previous reports. Yes.
Yeah. The first thing we've got to then bear in mind is that the top line, or the top set of figures is estimates of waste arising in total, wood waste arising in total. It's not what's going to landfill.
No, that's the arising figure.
Thank you. But we do see a mention in the bottom on comments for 2012 for Denver on, I think, if I'm reading it right, it's 0.8 to 1.2 million tonnes to landfill, isn't it?
That's what it's saying, yeah.
No recognition, I think, as such, of the 0.6 million tonnes in England figure that we see in Denver.
Well, the figure there is that they quoted is 0.8 to 1.2.
Thank you. And just a small point, actually. Interestingly, the CEDA report, which is the penultimate column there that we referred to, I think what we're simply referred to on the CEDA report is a web link, isn't it?
Yes, in the footnote, yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Mr. Watson, being an assiduous sort of chap, tried to access the web link, but the website was closed in March of this year, and it's inaccessible. How on earth was the AEA report thinking that was of any assistance to this inquiry?
As I can't speak for it.
The position is this, isn't it? That the Northwest is responsible for about 12% of the UK wood waste arising.
Sorry, where have you got that figure from?
Well, it's in Mr. Watson's proof, actually. We can dig that out if necessary.
Well, if it's there...
I don't think it's contested.
Yeah.
But,
I don't have an alternative figure.
Right, okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. It's paragraph 143 of this proof. If DEFRA 2012, the call for evidence is correct about there being 0.6 million tonnes going to landfill in England as a whole, I don't think we need to get the calculator out to work out that 12% of that in the Northwest just wouldn't provide a sufficient source for this proposal, would it?
Well, I'm sure that calculation is correct, but without going over old ground, I would say again that is based on the available data. And as AEA say in the following paragraph that comes after this table, what those figures show is a large range of estimates, and they indicate the inherent uncertainty. And they go on at the top of page 14 to say constantly it is not clear how much waste goes to landfill or the quality of that waste wood. So, yes, I accept your figures, but I would simply say to the inspector those figures need to be considered in the context of that inherent uncertainty.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Those figures need to be looked at in the context of that inherent uncertainty.
Well, indeed, but given that there is the inherent uncertainty, which we have in all matters, including modelling of air quality,
I can't comment
given there is the inherent uncertainty, what is the inspector to do? Is he to work off the figures, or is he to pluck something out of the air?
We agree those are the figures which are available to the inspector as being the most recent figures. The inspector will then have to exercise his judgment as to what the future scenario is likely to be.
Is he to deal with it objectively?
Of course.
Okay. To do an objective assessment of the word, Professor Richards?
Well, I've challenged the inspector, that's up to him to decide. What I would say, the inspector needs to look at those figures in the context of the evidence. And the evidence here is that those figures, the data, in terms of both risings and more particularly in respect to the amount of waste wood going to landfill, that data is inherently uncertain. That's really defined government because it says so in the DEFRA 2012 report.
Yes. Now, if we then take out core document 82 for 1 minute, please.
Appendix.
Pardon?
I put the
I think you can for the moment, certainly.
I'm only trying to make a bit of space.
No. You have my sympathy. Do understand.
Sorry, 80?
82.
Which is wood waste market in India, UK.
It is, sir, that's correct. And also, I think, known as the sort of the RAP 2009 one. And if we turn to page 16 of that, we've got table 8, I think, Mr. Singleton, haven't we?
Sorry.
16.
Sorry, page 16, table 8. And we can see that it gives us, albeit we have to bear in mind it's 2009, it gives us a regional analysis by wood waste stream in thousands of tons, doesn't it?
Yes.
And if we work our way down to the northwest, we can see figures given there, which come to a total of 543, if we want to round it up, thousands.
Reading, yeah, 542.9.
Yeah, 543 thousand tons.
Yes.
This is in thousands, isn't it? And indeed, if it helps at all, Mr. Watson, I think, has siphoned out, if that's the right word, that particular line, and he's inserted it in paragraph 132 of his proof. So rather than having to keep trying to find where the northwest is, if anybody needs to look at those figures later, that's where you will find them. Now, that would suggest, if we were to use that source of data, that even if we were looking at the total wood waste arisings for the northwest, they'd come to about that figure of 543,000 tonnes, wouldn't they?
That's what that table shows, yes.
In fact, there are grounds for concluding that that figure will have fallen since then, aren't there?
Sorry, on what basis?
Well, if we look at the more recent data from RAP, what that indicates is that there has been a fall in total wood waste arisings in the United Kingdom. We'd expect that to be in the UK. And we'd expect that probably to be reflected in the northwest as well.
As a general picture, I would guess that is right.
Yeah.
But again, these figures are qualified in the document that we're looking at, because it comments here that the figures in Table 8 are substantially less than the figures presented in previous studies. And this is thought to be due mainly to a lack of data in the construction sector. So again, it's pointing to the difficulty and the limitations on the data sources.
Now,
whether the data on the construction sector is any better in the 2012 estimates, we don't have any evidence on that one.
Be that as it may, Mr. Singleton, we've got no cause for believing the figure would be more than 543,000 tonnes. The only information we have at all suggests it might have fallen somewhat since then.
Well, as I say, that's based on the available data.
Now, of course, what we have to bear in mind then is that even if we were to use that figure of 543, that's total waste wood arising.
That's the that's the waste arising.
It isn't what's going to landfill, and indeed the majority does not go to landfill, does it?
Well, we've seen the figures in the other report.
Yeah.
The proportions that are going to recycling, yes.
Yeah, and indeed, position is this, isn't it, that if we actually look at where wood goes, and Mr. Watson, for example, gives us figures from 2007 with respect to that, where we're told that 58% of UK wood was used for wood panel boards and 25% for agricultural and horticultural purposes, which I get to be 83%, if I've done the sums right. Yep.
Yes, I accept that.
That then leaves a balance of 17% for other uses, not all again of which would be landfill, would they? Because of course we'd be looking at other things such as energy recovery.
Well, that conclusion would flow, but we come back to the point that that issue has not been raised by the statutory consultation in respect of the compliance of this scheme with the waste plan.
And
we also come back to the general position that the 2012 figures are I hate to use the term snapshot, but they are a picture at one point in time. And the economic downturn clearly is a significant issue in affecting those figures.
the position's this, isn't it? I've just, don't trust me if you don't want to, I've just plugged it into the calculator. 17% of 543 I get to be just over 92.3 watts, so it would be about 92,000 tonnes.
I'm sure one of the people here will check your calculation.
I'm happy to do it in round terms anyway. What we're talking about is something less than 100,000 tonnes.
That's the calculation, that's the calculation.
And of course, we know that Peel already have a consent on Incinerator for a biomass plant with a capacity of 176,500 tonnes.
Correct.
So it's quite plain, isn't it, that in actual fact, looking at those figures we've got for the North West, there wouldn't even be the capacity for the Incinerator scheme, was there?
I think we'll be repeating the answer. That is based on the most recent data with all the caveats that I talked about previously.
So I think that's a yes. On that data, there wouldn't be enough capacity.
Well, on that simple calculation, that's the suggestion is.
And of course, what we've got to bear in mind is that there are other facilities proposed or operating in the northwest, as Mr. Watson pointed out in paragraph 140 of his proof.
Yes.
Right. Now, I'm about to move to another topic, so I'm happy to carry on. But
Okay, well, I think it would be good to have a break now, as it's about 11 o'clock, so we've had an hour and a half on wood waste, essentially. So, and I am aware that you've got other important issues to cover. So, we'll have a break anyway for 15 minutes now, please, so that'll bring us back at just after 10 past 11.